welcome to Indigene and welcome to Bangalore, India, Georgia. It's such a great pleasure to have you visit us. Thank you so much for taking the time out.
Thank you.
For everyone else who's watching this, Georgia Papathomas has for more than 4 decades of a very rich experience in the technology, telecom and life science industry. She started her career with iconic Bell Labs right after her PhD and Masters and undergrad from Columbia University. After a very successful stint in technology and business in Bell Labs in Lucent, she moved to probably the best industry in the world, life sciences. I'm sure you'll agree with that.
Yes, absolutely.
And had stints in Pfizer, Boehringer, and J&J, probably over 2 decades. Now Georgia is an independent director on our board, as on Indigene's board, and she serves as a board member and advisor to many interesting companies. Privileged to have you join us for this discussion. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Manish. I really appreciate it.
So my first question, Georgia, what do you do to keep up this great energy levels? You came into India yesterday, and you were better. I came back from the US 1 week back. I'm still struggling with my jet lag. So what is the secret over here?
So that's the secret is that you are dealing with things that interest you a lot, and it gives you a lot of energy. So it's been a pretty good experience. I mean, I have to say that Indigene attracts real talent. I mean, I've had the privilege of working for companies that really attract the talent. I mean, as you said, back at Bell Labs. And most of actually all the companies from Pfizer and BI and J&J, they stood apart because they really were very serious about the right talent. And I was so pleasantly surprised that the people I met, they are really, I mean, top notch in what they do. They share values, they share a vision of what the company should be. And to me, that gives me energy. I mean, just the conversations, it brings ideas to me. It's just to make me think. And I think, I always say, the best compliment I can give somebody is that they make me think. And your team actually made me think a lot.
That's so good
that's
to hear.
That's what keeps me awake.
So I got to be interacting with our team more after
yes, you should.
To fight jet lag. That's a good tip. Thank you. So let me start. You've had such an interesting career, and I was listening to all the stories you had about all your companies yesterday. Your passion for technology and innovation in all the discussions I've had with you also is so very evident. Can you tell us about some of the most interesting, or let's say 1 or 2 interesting technology projects you are engaged in any of your companies, and what kind of impact did they create?
So I'm going to choose one from my life in pure technology, and then one my life in being
best industry
in
in the world.
Healthcare. So I'll start back at Bell Labs. So as I've told you before, my first job at Bell Labs, I was very much involved in mathematical modeling, numerical methods, computer models of physical phenomena. So one of my assignments was to be able to develop a mathematical model to understand how electrons move through a semiconductor device. And at the time, we're looking for very high speed and nanotechnology with materials that were beyond silicon. So a lot of complexity. And as I started working and was very excited about getting a model that will help it was in partnership with the people who did the actual experiments in the lab. So we got to analyze the flow of electrons mathematically, and they did it in the lab. So it was interesting because I realized that the traditional quantum physics and mathematics were breaking down once you get to nanotechnology.
And this was, I'm assuming, in the early 80s? Or
this is in the early 80s, exactly. And, this is 10 to the minus 9, in technology. So we had to find mathematical models that actually could represent how electrons move, and that's when fractals came in. It was not something I really had studied a lot, and they knew this was something I had to learn. So it was, we actually did it, and that was one of my prides, that we were actually able to analyze and create very effective models. And we were able to publish to the Journal of Applied Physics. This was with my maiden name, of course. Now there's a different name. And that gave me tremendous satisfaction, because I was able to just go beyond what I knew and learn it and apply it and get true business results.
Wow.
And I'll bring you to the end of my career. An example will be I introduced data sciences to J&J, and I built a very strong data sciences organization, and a very rich database of real-world data. And one of the successes that I thought had real business impact was our ability to use real-world data to provide the FDA with the evidence that they were requiring through a clinical trial. This is what they requested.
Sure.
But we're able to provide that information and avoid a clinical trial, which means millions of dollars and many months getting the product to market. So these are the two extremes.
Interesting. Just a related question on this, on the second part. Most of the real world data and the richness of the real world data is restricted or at least limited to the United States. Have you seen, what has been your experience with initiatives to really broaden that to many more countries, especially the emerging ones?
There are many initiatives in Europe in particular. There's even more serious initiatives in Europe to establish electronic medical records and be able to capture real world data. And China as a country is trying to implement it. This kind of things take a long time. But there's a serious effort around the world to be able to use electronic medical records, electronic health records, to capture that data. And there's also a whole movement in using digital health wearables and software to be able to collect data in real time again, outside of the doctor's office. And so we've seen actually technology companies, from Samsung to Apple, just to take the two ends of the world, who are very serious in addressing healthcare through wearables and their devices. So I think you're going to see more and more real-world data. The challenge using real-world data will be in truly understanding the accuracy of the data and the bias of the data.
Sure.
So the accuracy is there's a lot of missing information that you need to make sure that it's accurate and complete. The bias is the type of information that's been captured sometimes, especially when you look at electronic medical records, electronic health records, is based on the questions that the doctor asked the patients. And we have seen a different approach to the kind of population that the doctor might be talking to.
Okay. That's
so what is being captured sometimes could be different.
Sure.
So there's a lot that we need to do. Just because the data is available, it doesn't mean that it's usable at the state that you receive it.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. So from what I gather from you is you would think that electronic medical records, that's the bedrock of all the real world data thing. Because in the US, obviously, there is so much more, obviously, the claims data sets, the genomic databases.
I mean, actually, real world data will come from many different sources. But if you're looking into the pharma and the ability to make scientific decisions, you have to bring in not only real world data, you have to bring clinical data,
Correct.
You have to bring research data, things that have been published, things that have been worked on. So it's not just real world data that will allow you to, really, to give you the richness and the insights that you need to make serious decisions. And we've seen finally pharmaceutical companies are realizing the abilities that they have with the ability to bring the big data, as we call it, because big data is not just real world data, big data, and to finally start understanding patients and disease.
Sure.
So we're going to move a little bit farther than just understanding, what's the best molecule, to really understanding disease and understanding how, what's the right patient, what the patient will accept and will not accept. And it will impact everything from clinical trials to discovery, commercialization. That's deep knowledge that somehow it's missing.
Yeah.
And we're finally getting the opportunity with this big data to start understanding, the core principles of the disease that we're going to cure and the patient that we're going to, bring a cure to the patient, understand that patient.
That is so exciting. So it's always the holy grail.
It's a new world, exactly. We're starting a new space now in healthcare.